and C should be pretty routine by this point in time. And then as far as D through F goes, this is the next level, the final level. There's one type of factoring that you add to this in 11th grade, but other than that, it's all the factoring you're pretty much ever going to need to know right through college. Pretty much. Okay? All right, come on, let's go. Turn on a little. You know, it's like any other teenager. If it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, smack it around a little.
That was funny.
And then everything is okay. Okay, so I think when you look at letter D, it's pretty obvious that they share a 4 in common. So you factor out that 4 and you're left with m squared minus n squared. The step that you have to take is to look at m squared minus n squared and say, how do I break that down? Because when you see this word completely, factor completely, it always should translate into your mind into 2 steps. The first step is to pull out the 4. But then you're going to need to factor m squared minus n squared. And that's a difference of 2 perfect squares situation. You can square root both of them, and that gives you m plus n and minus n. Okay? The next one, it seems to me, is pretty obvious. They share a negative 2 and an x in common. So I pull out the negative 2x. I'm left with x squared plus x minus 56. And this gets me to the point where it's extremely important that you have the fallback position to go to. I think that the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons, it's not the biggest, but one of the biggest reasons kids have a hard time doing certain kinds of problems. When they start the problem, they start drowning in thinking about what they don't know. It's like if you start to drown in a pool, the biggest thing is that the panic is what causes you to drown. And on these questions, sometimes kids will go into a panic mode because they'll break down over what are the factors of negative 56. And to me, that is what is so important about your calculator. Look, most factories are nice, simple numbers. 15 and 1, 5 and 3. 20, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. But you start getting into 56, that's not something we deal with every day. And I remember one on a Regents exam was 6,000. So, when you get into an uncomfortable number, you go to your calculator, and in this particular problem, you type in negative 56 divided by x. And then you just look in the table until there's 2 whole numbers next to each other. And those are the factors of that last term. And then you, in turn, look at them and say, well, in this case, do they add up to positive 1? And that would make it x plus 8 times x minus 7. And it's extremely important when you list your answer that all 3 parts of that be listed. If only 2 of them are listed, like what kids often do is they often leave off the negative 2x. You would get it wrong. You have to have all the parts listed. And last but not least, this is a very challenging one. The highest grade, little personal challenge coming out here. The highest grade that any of my students so far, through 2 years of Common Core Regents, have gotten on the Regents exam is your brother. I don't remember if it was a 94 or a 96. 96. Okay. Then he is one of very few who actually scored lower on the integrated algebra Regents, because I think he was 96 and 94 on the 2 tests. I've had kids get 100 on the integrated algebra Regents, but the highest on this, I thought it was a 96 too. It's a 96, which is an extremely high grade on this particular test.
He was really mad.
He was really mad, huh?
Yeah.
All right, well, here's the thing. They had a question exactly like this. Well, actually, it was slightly different, but it was in the spirit of this question. And I just remember him coming out of the test talking about it like crazy. And I cannot remember for the life of me if he said, I got it, or, oh, I should have got it. But anyway, my point is, they do put questions like this on the Regents exam. And I don't remember if it was worth 2 or 4 points. Look, as soon as I see just 2 terms and the minus in between, I'm thinking difference of 2 perfect squares, okay? Now, if I square root and square root. The square root of y to the 8th is y to the 4th. The square root means the number that times itself equals the thing you're looking for. Like the square root of 100 is 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. Well, the square root of y to the 8th is y to the 4th, because y to the 4th times y to the 4th is y to the 8th. You could always remember, just divide this number by 2, and that'll give you the square root. So that gives me y to the 4th. So I get y to the 4th and y to the 4th. Now, what's the square root of 81? 9. So I get 9 and 9, of course plus and minus. And then lastly, the square root of x to the 4th is x squared. And on the particular question they had on the Regents, a lot of kids stopped right there. The problem is, if you look a little closer, this is another difference of two perfect squares. You can do that one also. The square root of y to the 4th is y squared, and the square root of negative 3x squared is negative 3x positive 3x. So this would be the example that we're looking for. Okay? So anyway, my advice to you is to understand what the competition is going to do to you, and they will ask you to factor completely somewhere on your Regents exam. And if you can handle all three types of those questions, you can do not only anything they will ever ask you on the Regents exam, but you will be fully competent through most of 11th grade. Okay? Was anybody at the library last night? Who was it that I called over? Was it you? Oh, it was you and Christina. You remember I called you over to show you that the stuff Kevin Fran was doing is exactly what we're doing? And he's in Algebra 2 trade right now. And other than the fact that there was one little step that you had to learn before this that you wouldn't know, he was doing exactly this. And you will need this. This is very, very, very foundational for future success. Okay? All right. Now, today's lesson. And this is it. Come on. All right. So yesterday we talked about the term undefined, and I have this very sick and twisted sense of humor. Have you all seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
No.
If we finish early, I will show you video clips from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. All right? Yeah, it's classic stuff. I have this very dry British sense of humor. And I love that we define undefined. I think that is just hysterical. Anyway, undefined means what, where. Undefined means what, where.
Nowhere.
No, definitely aware.
Everywhere.
No,
Underwear.
almost.
Overwhere.
Under in the fraction. Undefined means
Denominator.
0 in the denominator. Okay? So that was one thing we talked about, and then we talked about quadratic equations. Now, let me go through a very simple, straightforward, basic quadratic equation that I want to give to you guys. Just to get it all done, x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Somewhere on your paper, fit that in. Go ahead and do it.
Wait.
I wrote it in red, solid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know it.
This is my equipment. You're clever. You're no, we won't do that. But then if you do that, you can keep going.
All right. So, the first thing that's really weird about a quadratic equation is that, first off, there's something squared. And yesterday I told you what the importance of having something squared was. What does that square tell you you're probably going to have in the problem? 2 answers. Very good. Or 2 roots or 2 zeros. It's all the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Now, the next thing I want you to realize, why is this not working again? Smack it around.
Don't you dare.
Why?
So you treat your kids.
If they deserve it. You do realize that sometimes not smacking your kid is far worse than smacking your kid. It's a true statement. Because you can raise a terror if you don't correct them. Now, I have 2 sons. Jimmy, who you know as the sub, in his entire life, I believe he was spanked once.
Cool.
And I did that because my wife would have executed me if I didn't. My wife was very mad at him, and she was chasing him. Jimmy was about this big at the time. And she was chasing him all over the living room trying to capture him. So she thought she got him in a corner, and she lunged for him, and he ducked and went right between her legs. And then she almost fell over. So I started laughing. This wasn't good. She said, "You better hit it!" So I, Jimmy, get over here. That's the only time Jimmy ever got hit in his entire life. Bobby? With regularity. I would sit down, Bobby would do something wrong, like let's say backtalk his mother.
Yeah.
And I go, "Bobby, knock it off." And then 30 seconds later, he'd be back talking her again. And I'd call her, "Let's talk about this." I'd sit him down, and I'd go, "Do you know why you can't backtalk your mother?" And I'd explain the whole thing. And he'd go, "Oh yeah, Dad, I understand." Okay, good. So we don't have to worry about this anymore? Nope, I won't backtalk you. 1 minute later, backtalk. Okay. So then I'd say, okay, time to get punished. So I'd take away one of his favorite things. Think that made a difference?
No.
Not backtalking again. So then we'd lock him in his room. Don't give him anything. As soon as you let him out, backtalk again. So then I go, "You know what, bud? If this happens again, you're gonna get hit. That's it. I've exhausted every other nice thing I can do." Okay. That's why God gave you padding on the butt. So it's really more of an intimidating, scary kind of thing than it is actually a painful kind of thing. So hold it. So he gets whacked on the butt, and this is the part that always scared me about it. Really, really scared me. When I was a kid and I got beat, I wanted to fight my father. I could have been 5 years old. I wanted to break out into a fist fight. "Oh, you want to hit me? I would hit Bobby, and then I'd go sit in the living room, and then after he'd stop crying, he would come in, and he'd hold me. And I'm like, that's weird. He'd grab my leg and put his hand. I'm like, that's freaky, man, get away. You're supposed to want to hit me right now. You're supposed to hate me right now. You're not supposed to be like, "I love you, you hit me." That's weird. I don't like that. That's really, really freaky. Yes?
Okay, so my sister had her first kid, Charlie, when I was 5. So he's like 2, I'm 7. I have no idea what I'm doing. He spills my Italian ice. What am I supposed to do? Just
BAM! Right upside the head.
That's exactly what I did. He spilled my house.
Yeah.
That's unforgivable, dog.
That's it. Did you kind of give him one of these?
No. But then I started to cry. Because I was afraid what my mom would do. And
I
then
just had this. Hold on, I just had this picture of you on the cover of Newsday with the prison inmate thing with the numbers underneath, child abuse. So, all right. Now, getting back to the matter at hand. All we do is pretend the equals 0 doesn't exist. It's not there. Just do AM, and that would give me x plus 5 times x minus 2. And it is kind of strange because this, for the first time, you want everything on one side. Now, we get to what we did near the end of class yesterday, and I said I have 2 numbers behind my back, and when I multiply those 2 numbers, here's one of my numbers, here's the other one. When I multiply the 2 numbers, I get 0. What could you tell me?
It doesn't matter.
No, there's only one way to make 0 with multiplying. What's the only way to make 0? One of them has to be 0, or both. So maybe it's the guy on the left, maybe it's the guy on the right. Minus 5 minus 5, x is negative 5. And plus 2, x is equal to 2. Now, in honor of the great Mr. Frank, we could plug in the -5, it would check, and we could plug in the 2 and it would check, but you know how I feel about checks. There's something very important to understand here. When solving a quadratic equation, for now, and most of the time throughout the rest of your life, we always want it to have the whole trinomial equals 0. We want to see that. So now I go over here and I look at my do it, and what do you notice? It doesn't equal 0. So what do you think you do to make it equal 0? That's right, you add 5 to
Oh,
both
dang
sides.
it. I just did
And I
this on
get x
yesterday's
squared
homework.
minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. And that you should be able to factor. So because I needed to show you that step, I'm going to pause for 1 minute and let you do that. In all of my years of teaching, which is quite a few, I don't think I've ever had a student say that and do that before. Just that. That could be like a sign of some psychosis. Okay,
No, don't do it.
okay.
Do
Now,
it.
AM, what two, forget about the equal 0, it's completely irrelevant. What two numbers multiply out to positive 24 and add up to negative 11?
-3 is alright.
Yeah, that. Now, it is, listen, in the beginning, listen very carefully. In the beginning, it is, I think, extremely important that students write down the factors of 24. They might write 1 and 24, and then -1 and -24, and then 2 and 12, and then -2 and -12, and then 3 and 8, and -3 and -8, and then 4 and 6, and -4 and -6. And then you look at it and you say to yourself, well, which of these add up to -11? It's these two, so that means my factors have to be x minus 8 and x minus 3 equals 0. However, after a couple of days, you should not need to continually write out all the factors, okay? Because it does rob you of time. And the next test you take will just be, I would say, more than half of the test is just factoring in quadratic equations, which should make you very happy because it's very straightforward. It really is. It's much more doable. All right, x minus 8 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, adding 8 to both sides. X is 8, adding 3 to both sides. X is 3, okay? Now, if we take a look at number 6, and I want to solve this particular problem, when I look at it, you know, there's such an instinct. Let's do a challenge here. If anybody can get this right, I will give you a free 100 quiz grade. But, fair warning, I've had 2 kids get it right in 30-something years. Okay? So, considering I have a little over 100 kids a year, I've probably had 2 kids out of about 4,000 get this right.
If I miraculously get this right, can I get a handout?
Sure.
Don't you dare use those kind of things.
Like, I'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Why do you do this? Wait, I know that one.
Wait, we have to do
Okay, now, please don't talk,
Okay.
because I don't want you to help each other, and I don't want you to inspire ideas.
Which one?
Oh, you gotta do all 4. Now, I'm gonna do the first one with you, or for you, so that I give you a hint or a direction, and then you're gonna do the last 3. You must get all 3 right after the first one in order to be considered correct. So, what we're going to do is, I wanna make the equation true. Now, the one thing you cannot do, you cannot like take one of these and put it through the equal sign and write not equals. All right, you can't do that. So, what I would do on this first one is, I would like get rid of this and move it here, and then by Roman numerals, I would have 6 equals 6. Does that make sense?
Oh, I get it.
Okay, right, you see like V1, 6, V is 5, so 6 is equal to, it used to say 11, X1, but I moved that over. Treat them all like they're toothpicks, and you can move a toothpick anywhere you want, but you have to make the equation true when you're done. So I get 6, V1 equals, then I change X1 to V1 by sliding it over, and I get 6, so 6 equals 6, check. You need to get the next 3, go ahead. And do not talk to each other.
Alright, monster.
Anybody gets it right, and you have a 1-minute time limit, anybody gets it right, you get a 300 quiz grade and a pudding. You have as long as it takes me to get through the Jeopardy song. Do 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 do. Ah!
Wait, you can put the sticks anywhere?
Na 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 na. Da da na 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 womp womp. My guess is you all got the next 2 and couldn't get the last one.
I got
Wait.
the last one.
Wait.
You got the last one?
Maybe.
What does your last one say?
And move the stick from the right side onto the left side and put a 0.
Well,
X.
what'd you do, like wet the stick and bend it? And,
Yeah.
now, here's how you do this.
Wait, don't tell me yet.
Oh, I am gonna tell you.
No, don't do it.
Well, I am. Now, ready? I don't care, okay,
Take one of the sticks of the V away and then put one of the ones on the other side.
no. There's nothing to do with putting it on the other side. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do this. On this one, I could erase this one, move it over, and make it a 12 equals 12, or x2 equals x2. Or I could take this one, and I can move it over there and get 7 equals 7, right? Okay, and I could do the same thing here. I could move this over to here, and I could get 8 equals 8. And what I have totally been doing is conditioning you to think in terms of Roman numerals. Because it's been shown 100 times that if I only gave you this question, and I did not give you the previous 3, that you are far more likely to get this correct. This solution has nothing to do with Roman numerals. Here's the answer. Put it up top. Square root of 1 is 1.
I don't like you.
Now, the moral behind the story is this. The moral behind the story is that sometimes we tend to get so locked in on our thinking, and the first 3 questions served to lock you in on your thinking. We get so locked in on our thinking that we lose sight and we lose vision in terms of what is going on. So if I go back to this question, so often people see the squared term here and they immediately want to do double packages, and that would be wrong. What are you supposed to do before you cross the street? Look both ways. What do you do before you factor? You don't look both ways, no. What do you do before you factor? Look for a common factor. They share an x in common. X times 7x plus 1 equals 0. This is actually much easier than the previous one. Maybe it's the guy on the left. Maybe it's the guy on the right. Now, subtract 1. 7x equals -1. Divide by 7. So my 2 answers are 0. I don't need to do any work for that one. It's all done. And then -1/7. Okay? Any questions?
Why is it a -2?
Because I have to subtract the 1,
I get it.
then divide by 7.
Wait,
Okay.
why is it 1/7?
Because I subtract the 1, I divide by 7.
Why can't you just do the, whatever?
Okay. Now, let's take a look at this one here. What do you think you have to do for this question? To begin it.
What's both ways?
Wow, hold it, hey, don't pack up. Seriously, there's something you need to do first here.
Oh, give it a square.
No, you gotta make it equal 0,
You
right?
have to add 7.
That's right, so you gotta add 7 to both sides.
I was looking at the bottom one.
Alright, 7r squared minus 14r plus 7 equals 0. And then, what do you do before you cross the road?
Look both ways.
So what do you do before you try to go to double packages? Look for a common factor. I think there's a pretty obvious one here. What is it? 7. Very good. Yasmin, you look like you were going to murder someone.
I said 7.
Yes, but you said it like this. Now, this is very easy to factor. What do you factor that to?
Wait, no, I'm asking a question.
What?
I'm asking a question. Why didn't you just add the 7 to the negative 14r?
Because you can't combine numbers with r's. Now, if I factor this, I get r minus 1 times r minus 1. Because minus 1 times minus 1 is plus 1, negative 1 and negative 1 add up to 2. Now this is interesting, because now we have 3 things that multiply out to 0. One of them has to be 0. Maybe it's the guy on the left. Maybe it's the guy in the middle. Maybe it's the guy on the right. Now, does 7 ever equal 0? No. So I can reject that. I cross it out. And then this will be r equals 1, and this will be r equals 1. Okay? We take a look at the last one for the day. 2d squared plus 5d minus 12. Now, is there a common factor?
No.
Let's pray they get this right. There's no common factor. What do you do?
Look for
Plan B. Who said plan B? Nicely done. Multiply by 2. D squared plus 5d minus 24 equals 0. Now this I factor. And you're going to get what? What 2 numbers multiply out to negative 24 add up to positive 5, negative, see, you said negative 8, you messed me up. Negative 3 and positive 8. So that would be maybe it's the guy on the left, maybe it's the guy on the right. But since I plan B'd it, I have to divide back in by the 2. So then I get 2d minus 3 equals 0 and d plus 4 equals 0. And I get negative 4, and I get, in this case, 3/2. We have another 2 days of working this, and that is everything in terms of how hard it gets. Hasta la vista, vaya con Dios, toodaloo, ta-ta, arrivederci.